We spoke with a bipartisan group of mayors about how local governments can find common ground on solving some of the top problems facing Americans today, particularly affordability concerns like housing costs and energy prices. But for all four mayors, Democrats Eileen Higgins of Miami, Quinton Lucas of Kansas City, plus Republicans David Holt of Oklahoma City and Mark Freeman of Mesa, Arizona, it was clear that immigration has been near top of mind following the deadly shootings of protesters in Minneapolis and the tensions between federal and local governments nationwide. Here's part of our conversation. Mayor Freeman, we checked. 4% of the population in Arizona is undocumented, according to Pew. As I understand it, you have limited cooperation with ICE, and you hand people over to federal authorities if they have an immigration infraction, but your local authorities picked them up for something else, right? That's what, in effect, that policy means. Why does that work for you when it doesn't work in places like Minneapolis and you have this high degree of tension and this standoff?
Well, personally, I think that's a great question, but I think there's some misinterpretation, excuse me, of it, because in Mesa, we have an agreement with ICE, but however, it's only on infractions that may be a civil infraction, and so we don't have a jail in Mesa, Arizona. So we go to a holding facility, and we've been working with ICE for since 2009 with an agreement that we found very successful with. But more importantly, what we're doing in Mesa, I've elevated it to the next level. We have Dias de Muertos, the Day of the Dead, that we have with our Hispanic Latino community. We have El Grito, who's the liberation of Spain from Mexico. So we have these great experiences in Mesa, Arizona, in our downtown area in cooperation with our Latino, Hispanic area. And I meet with our pastors as well to make sure that everything is going well on their end. And you don't feel the tension at the local level right now? Like the debate we're having as a country? No, I don't.
Are people talking about it?
Yeah, they talk about it in our community, but I'm meeting with the people who are actually affected by it, and they find comfort in knowing that our city stands ready to support them.
Mayor Holt, I want to ask you about your city, but also in this leadership role you have, like, how are you counseling mayors to go through this right now? This is a real pressure at the federal level to sometimes change local laws or state laws.
Well, I don't know, a few observations in reaction to that. I mean, first, it's really important to point out that we have enforced immigration laws in this country for over a century. ICE has been around for 2 decades. There was even a previous Trump administration and in none of those times did you see this level of chaos in our cities. I understand in the previous Trump administration there was controversy about things at the border, but I'm talking about all the 1,000 miles from the
internal
border
enforcement.
in places like Minneapolis. So we can look back to previous eras of normality and appreciate that there are ways to competently enforce immigration laws in this country. And I think that's what we're kind of asking for is that sort of pivot back to a new strategy that may be an old strategy. And I think we all accept that this administration prioritizes a higher level of enforcement. But what we're seeing in the conflicts in the streets of Minneapolis is just obviously unacceptable. And we're still sort of reeling from what happened last Saturday. And, we're generally encouraged that the administration seems to be exploring that pivot, and of course we understand it takes time to sort of get the right personnel in place and make the policies. So, I mean, we're giving them that space. But what was happening in Minneapolis that kind of culminated in the second death of a protester last Saturday is obviously something that we would all fear to happen in our cities. Yeah. And we feared that kind of chaos was starting to potentially creep around the country. I think the other thing I want to observe, though, is that mayors are certainly caught in a little bit of an impossible situation because, we take these roles with our chief obligation being the protection of our residents, and we're even given a police department, people with guns to aid us in that pursuit. But there is a thing called the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, and when the federal government and federal law enforcement comes into your city, we are fully subservient to that in the eyes of the law, and we also believe in the rule of law. So we get caught kind of in the middle of these tensions, and we need a federal government who will use discretion and restraint with that power. And that has mostly worked for the last 250 years. So I think we just need to remind everybody that this is possible. And I think you see mayors maybe messaging some of that to our residents, some of it to Congress, some of it to the administration, just trying to find a happy medium for everybody where we can coexist with all of these inherent tensions that, of course, have always existed, and we have largely been able to manage.
But that's why I think it's so interesting to talk to you all as mayors, because you actually have to deal with these people day to day and secure their safety, as you said, but also, remain compliant. In Oklahoma, it looks like the Highway Patrol works with ICE to conduct stings. So you do have some working together of state.
Yeah, I mean, it's a state agency, the Oklahoma Highway Patrol.
Right.
That is not our police department.
Right. But when you see that working together, is it smooth? Are there tensions now because of what just happened in the past few weeks? Like, are people questioning whether these policies should stay?
Well, I mean, let me differentiate and make it clear.
Do people look at Minneapolis and say that could happen here?
Well, of course,
what I'm
sure every mayor in America here in D.C. was feeling that way, and again, not because any of us think that there shouldn't be immigration enforcement.
Right.
I mean, this is not the question. It's just, how is it managed? I mean, we have some mayor colleagues that were former police chiefs, for example, have really great expertise in law enforcement. We're all amateurs, right? But these are people who did this for a living, and they're telling us, they look at these videos and they see police tactics that haven't been utilized anywhere in 30 years in a local law enforcement agency, that these are not the cutting edge techniques of law enforcement that we have been using, our police departments have been using for the last quarter century to build trust with our communities. Right. And so that's it's not we're not really arguing about whether this country should enforce immigration. Right. Everybody believes that. I mean, not everybody, but the broad swath of the American public does. But what we are arguing about is police tactics and strategies and managing engagement with residents on the street. We have built so much trust in these last few years and worked really hard at that. And obviously, this whole situation has threatened to erode that trust. Yeah,
Mayor Lucas, I want to come to you on this idea of how the federal government is trying to implement immigration in your city, because we checked, and I believe you have a similar experience out in Oklahoma too, where the federal government's looking to turn industrial warehouses into large-scale detention facilities for up to 10,000 people. That has caused some friction in Kansas City. You have tried to change things. You passed a city ordinance to combat it. Can you actually stop the federal government from doing it?
I think there's substantial question to it. The people of Kansas City have asked us to make sure, though, that we stand up for, in this situation, simple zoning, that we make sure that we share what is the viewpoint of the people of Kansas City. There absolutely is a supremacy clause. There's also a 10th Amendment. And so in our view, which is reserved to the states, which includes local zoning, local police powers, particularly where private contractors are in the transaction with the city, we have the opportunity to engage. There's been a long fight near us in Leavenworth, Kansas, for a prison and a military base, where they've also managed to reject the placement of a federal facility working through a private enterprise. So we wanted to make clear not only that people largely didn't want a 10,000-person detention facility near them, but also that they have to go through things like zoning, a special use permit. It sounds in some way boring. It is core to what government is. But I think taking us from perhaps the political issue, there's the simple one, which is in all of our communities, we want to make sure people are treated humanely. Converting a gigantic distribution facility next to railroad tracks and all of that into a warehouse for 10,000 people, for which it was never designed, is not right. And it is fundamentally something that is inhumane and inhospitable, at least to the census that we have in Kansas City, and I would submit to you most American cities. So whether it is converting giant distribution facilities into mass detention warehouses, whether it's Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, or anything under the sun, I think you are seeing communities say, we want to make sure that if there will be detention, if there will be enforcement, it is consistent with constitutional principles long term.
Can you stop it? Do you know yet?
You know, I think that probably that'd be a federal district court determination. I have seen there have been many zoning battles over the years about what can be done. I think the fact that you mainly have private enterprises that are looking to build these, then lease to the government, creates some level of a question.
And before we leave the topic of immigration, Mayor Higgins, nearly 7% of Florida is undocumented, according to Pew. In Miami, the police cooperate with ICE. But you, during your campaign, were very critical of that decision to cooperate. Can you change the policy without the governor being on board?
The governor issued a requirement that local municipalities cooperate with ICE. And many municipalities, including the city of Miami, before I became mayor, signed that agreement. It is very difficult to unwind. It would take a vote of our city commission to do so. So obviously, as mayor, I intend to comply with the law. And so what we have done in our 1,500-person police department is we have trained 3 individuals, should ICE call, that are able to answer that call and work with them. Obviously, we're going to comply with the law, but we are not going to help beyond that. Because in my community in South Florida, we are the most affected. ICE and its tactics have been in my community for over a year. They have been causing great fear and terror in our residents. I cannot go anywhere without meeting someone, my brother, my uncle, my sister, Alligator Alcatraz, no sabemos dónde está. We don't know where they have been taken. And that has been going on for months. It is inhumane, it is cruel. I'm a Catholic. I can barely grapple with the lack of humanity around all this. And then what we have very differently from any other community in Miami-Dade County, which we are part of, approximately 15% of our population has TPS. So you're talking
temporary protected status.
Temporary protected status. You're talking about between 250 and 300,000 individuals that have slowly but surely, as they've lost status, become overnight illegals in the eyes of the federal government. And this enforcement in our Nicaraguan community, our Hondureño community, our Venezuelan community, has driven many people into hiding. Children are not going to school, and obviously ICE is deporting them. Tuesday night, we face a very, very dire situation. Our Haitian community loses its access to TPS at midnight. 20% of TPS recipients with Haitian heritage work in healthcare. So on Wednesday, we are talking about nursing homes, home health care aides, hospitals, nurses, physician aides. All of them are going to be out of a job when they wake up on Wednesday morning.
Because their legal pathway and status is going to be revoked, and suddenly they become illegal. Unnecessarily.
Haiti is not safe. Venezuela is not safe. TPS should be extended immediately for Venezuelans. It was erased with the stroke of a pen. It can be put in place with the stroke of a pen. And TPS for Haitian immigrants should absolutely, positively be extended. Our economy is at stake, and our humanity is at stake.
As Mayor Higgins mentioned, legal protections for Haitians on the Temporary Protected Status Program end this Tuesday. But there are multiple lawsuits by advocacy groups to try and stop it from expiring. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. is expected to weigh in on one of those cases in the coming days. We'll keep watching. You can find the full conversation with the mayors on our YouTube page and on our website, facethenation.com. We'll be right back.